Welcome to the Putting the Public into Health podcast by Dr. Richard Pan. As we face one of the greatest public health disasters in the century, this podcast will address questions and issues from you, the public, about the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on people's health and lives. I am Dr. Richard Pan. I'm a physician with a background in public health, and I'm proud to represent the people of Sacramento, Elk Grove, West Sacramento, and parts of Sacramento County in the California State Senate. The delayed federal response to the COVID-19 pandemic has had a devastating impact on jobs. About 3 million people have filed for unemployment in California since March, and I've received many questions about unemployment. I am fortunate to have Daniela Urban join me today. Ms. Urban is an employment lawyer and executive director of the Center for Workers' Rights. She runs the center's Workers' Rights Clinic. Thank you so much for joining me, Ms. Urban.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me about the Center for Workers' Rights and what is the center experiencing as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic?
The Center for Workers' Rights is a legal services nonprofit supporting workers in Sacramento and beyond with their workplace issues. So we talk to workers about what they're facing at work and help to find them a remedy or advise them about other available benefits. During the pandemic, we've been operating a helpline so that local workers can get quick information about their workplace rights in response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
As I mentioned, a lot of people are filing for unemployment, perhaps some people for the very first time in their lives. Who should be filing for unemployment? If you've been laid off, it seems to be a little more straightforward. But what happens if your employer says, I'm cutting your hours, or other types of events?
Yeah, so unemployment insurance benefits apply for any worker who loses their job or has reduced hours through no fault of their own. So if the reason that you've lost your job is COVID-related or because the business has shut down completely, you are able to get unemployment insurance for that loss of work, assuming you meet the other eligibility criteria.
And what kind of criteria are those?
The main criteria is that you have base period earnings, so you have to have worked enough in the prior 18 months to have qualified for unemployment insurance benefits. You also have to be able and available to work. So what that means is if you're currently sick with the pandemic or with the virus or have any other illness that prevents you from working, you won't be eligible for unemployment during the time that you're sick.
Oh, okay. So if you do file for unemployment, what do you need?
You'll need to be able to report who your last employer was and all the employers you've had in the last 18 months and how much you made with them per quarter.
Okay. And you mentioned that if someone was actually sick and that's why they can't work, they can't file for unemployment. What kind of options do they have?
Yeah, so it depends on the worker's situation. So if they are not working and their business is shut down and they become sick, they would be eligible, depending on the severity of the illness, they would be eligible for a state disability insurance, as long as they have a medical certification. If their employer is still operating and they become sick, then they can ask for paid sick days as a first remedy, and then if they exhaust those, then they might be able to get state disability to continue to be paid during the time that they're ill.
So what is the difference between applying for disability and applying for unemployment? What do you need to apply for disability?
Yeah, the main difference in terms of eligibility is whether you're able and available to work. In terms of application, the state disability insurance application requires medical certification.
So that means you have to go see a doctor or to get certification?
That's right. So during the pandemic, some medical providers don't require an in-person appointment, but if you have previously been diagnosed with a disability that has risk factors related to the COVID-19 pandemic, then they might issue you a doctor's certification that you shouldn't be working during the pandemic because of the increased risk factors.
Okay. Now, how much money do you get for filing for unemployment? Does it make up for the wages that you're losing?
It depends on what your income was before. So unemployment insurance has a maximum benefit under the state benefits of $450 per week. And then from the week ending April 4th to the end of July, there's an additional $600 per week that's being provided by the federal government. So that's a maximum benefit of $1,050 per week.
And how long does it take to get the money? I mean, you apply and you need money. How long do you have to wait?
So if you have all your ducks in a row and your employer has been properly reporting your wages, and you have a valid driver's license in California so that EDD is able to quickly verify your identity, it usually takes 3 weeks from application to approval to start receiving your unemployment benefits. If there's any issues with your application, that's when the slowdowns happen. Okay, so you can't count on the money right away, right? You have to... Right. Once you're approved, the money is retroactive. So it's not an immediate payment, but you will receive the money for the time that you've been out of work. Usually there's a 1-week waiting period, but that's been waived during the pandemic.
Okay.
There will be a new system opening up next week that will provide quicker payments under the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. And EDD has said that those payments will be provided within 48 hours.
Okay, so that's helpful. Now, we talked about disability, too. How much would you get for disability compared to unemployment?
Disability is based on a percentage of income, but is capped at $1,300 per week.
Okay, so basically, if you are sick and that's the reason you're out, you get disability. But if your business is closed or your hours are cut, you go for unemployment. Correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, there are because of the expansions of laws during the pandemic, for those who are ill with the virus or taking care of someone that's ill with the virus, there are more options depending on your size of employer, whether they're still operating, whether you had previously been working during the pandemic. So the distinctions for those workers who are themselves ill or taking care of a family member, it's a little more complicated. There's more things to evaluate depending on your employer. But that's the general distinction is if you're ill, then it's disability, and if you're not, then it's unemployment.
And if you need help with your applications for unemployment or disability, or you have questions, where are some good places to go to get help?
So we always point people first to EDD's website. They have lots of materials about how to apply, YouTube videos about the application process. So if folks have access to the internet, we recommend going to edd.ca.gov to access the information first. Also for state disability, EDD administers both programs.
Okay. And if you're still confused, are there other places to get help?
So if you're still confused, you can call EDD and see if they're able to answer the questions. They just recently extended their call center hours. And if you're not able to get through or they're not able to answer your questions, we operate a helpline where you can call and find out more about, what might be getting in the way of your application.
Now, I understand that EDD has received more applications in at least the first few weeks of April than the entire last year. And the governor has announced that they have actually taken government workers and transferred them to EDD or transfer people within EDD, over 1,000, to help people with their applications. What are you hearing about what it takes to apply for unemployment in terms of how many times people have to try or how persistent do people have to be before they can get through?
So far this week, we haven't heard too much difference in terms of the ability to get through the line as the hours have been extended. But we have seen a reduction in the calls that are coming to our office. So we're hoping that means EDD is handling more of the calls themselves, and folks are only coming to us once they have questions about what they've been told from EDD. I will just a moment of caution for workers who are talking to EDD. Many of these employees are new or don't have experience with unemployment before. So if they want to make sure that they're being provided accurate information, or if they're being told that they're not eligible for benefits that they believe they're eligible for, they should also give us a call and we can help talk them through, whether we believe EDD's determination was correct, or whether we believe that they should either appeal a decision or move forward with an application.
I appreciate that, because certainly the state is trying to step up in terms of getting more staff to process applications and take applications. But you're right, when you have as you staff up, you do have people who don't have as much experience yet. We don't actually want them to have too much in the sense that we don't want a lot more people being unemployed. But to a certain extent, while we are trying to train them, they are a bit also trying to learn on the job because we need them right now. And appreciate that you're there to provide some assistance as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we experienced this during the recession as well when EDD had a quick increase in staff. And, it takes some time for people to understand the complexity of unemployment insurance benefits. It's not an easy system. So that's why we have our helpline. It's under the supervision of trained attorneys as well as qualified intake counselors. So we can talk people through their particular circumstances and help evaluate the different benefits available.
Okay. And also this is first of all, it's also a federal program. So there are federal rules that the state has to apply and people have to learn, the people who are helping you. And also, actually, in a good way, some of the rules are changing to help more people, but that also means that people have to figure those out too, right?
Absolutely. Yes, it keeps changing. So someone who spoke to EDD in March, they're going to get different answers now when they call, not because EDD has miscommunicated before, but because the laws have changed.
Okay. Now, so if you're on unemployment, how long do you get it for?
So if this is the first time you've been unemployed during the last year, then state unemployment is a 26-week benefit, and then the federal government is providing an additional 13 weeks. So that's 39 total weeks.
Okay. Now, what if, unfortunately, you were laid off before COVID and you were already on unemployment and your unemployment has run out last month or is running out? Do you have any options then, or are you just out of luck?
Yes, the federal program extension also applies for those who've already exhausted their benefits. So it provides an additional 13 weeks to those who've already exhausted. We're still waiting for clarification from EDD as to how they would like these individuals to access the additional 13 weeks. Mm-hmm. So even though this was part of the CARES Act that was passed on March 27th or signed by President Trump on March 27th, there still has not been a process by EDD to get these extensions to qualified individuals.
Okay, so someone who's in that circumstance, obviously it's a terrible time to try to look for a job. They were on unemployment, they've exhausted it recently. Should they just keep checking the EDD website? What should they do in terms of seeing when they can try to get the additional extension?
Yes, I would recommend continuing to check the EDD website, following the Labor Workforce Development Agency on Facebook. They can follow us on Facebook. We are trying to get that information out as soon as we get notice from EDD that it's available. We're hopeful that answer will come soon.
Okay, so hopefully help is on the way, but we still have to wait and figure that out. All right. And that is part of the CARES Act. So it is now into law. It's a matter of implementation, correct?
Exactly right.
All right.
And so we're also hopeful that the benefits will be retroactive to the date of the signing of the law. Mm-hmm. So that folks haven't just lost this time, but that it's just a delay in payment.
All right. So now you're on unemployment, but you've had some debts and some people are wanting to be paid up and you're short of cash. So can someone garnish your unemployment payments?
Unfortunately, there are ways for creditors to try to garnish EDD payments, but there are ways to challenge it. Just in any debt collection situation, there are ways to challenge it.
So how would one go about doing that? I need the money and the debt collector chasing me.
So the debt collector has several steps that they have to take before they're able to garnish income. And that goes through the county where the debt is filed. So it's a little complicated, but for the most part, there are steps that through the courts that the debt collectors have to go through in order to get that funding.
Okay.
Get that payment.
Now, a lot of people have been making money as gig workers, or they have been working as independent contractors. So are they out of luck? What kind of options do gig workers and independent contractors have?
Yes, I'm going to break that down into two questions.
Okay.
So we have gig workers, and by gig workers, I think of app-based workers, so workers who get their employment through an app. They, under California law, are employees, and so are eligible for employment as long as they meet all the other eligibility requirements. And so they have been able to access benefits and will continue to be able to access benefits. And then independent contractors, so a true independent contractor or someone who is self-employed, they're not eligible for state unemployment insurance. It only covers employees. But the CARES Act enacted the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, which provides coverage to independent contractors as well as gig workers that in other states are not considered employees. And that system will go live on April 28th, and self-employed individuals can begin to apply for pandemic unemployment assistance.
And how's that compare with the unemployment program? Is it similar, or what's the difference?
Yes, it's very similar in the sense that it's based on your prior earnings. So the amount you get is based on how much you made previously. It also has the additional $600 added on till the end of July, like regular unemployment does. And it's also administered by EDD. So it has many similarities. It is a temporary program, however. So unlike state unemployment insurance, that is an ongoing program and you qualify for benefits based on your separation with your last employment, this program is only being administered right now temporarily. The program is available through the end of December, although there's only a total of 39 weeks, just like unemployment, for the PUA program.
And you mentioned that the gig workers are employees. That was a ruling by the California Supreme Court that many gig workers are actually employees. Now, many businesses, small businesses included, pay into the unemployment insurance fund. So as these gig workers are applying for unemployment, is the unemployment fund also being funded by the gig companies? Unfortunately,
no. The gig companies are still not acknowledging the laws that define who is an independent contractor and who is an employee, both under the Supreme Court case that you described, as well as the clarification that the legislature made under AB 5. So they have not been paying into the system, which is why the applications for gig workers can be delayed, because when the gig workers submit their application and EDD tries to compare their income with that reported by their employer, it's not a match.
Okay, so if you're a gig worker and you're applying for unemployment insurance, there may be a delay because of that?
Yes, so most gig workers, in fact, probably all have, if they have tried to apply already, they've probably received a notice of award of $0. And what that means is that when EDD checked to see how much income was reported by whichever app they work for to EDD for the purpose of unemployment taxes, there was nothing there. And that's why their notice of award is $0. That doesn't mean they're not eligible for benefits, and it's not a denial of benefits. It's just the first stage where EDD has said, I'm sorry, your employer has not reported any wages, and we need to get more information from you.
Okay, so you're a gig worker, you receive this notice, it says $0. It's easy to be frustrated or just say, okay, I'm done, right? So what should the gig worker do? They get this notice. What should they be expecting next?
So what they can do is, it is frustrating. We've heard from many workers, and it's frustrating because it's not their fault. You know, they've been working, they've been putting in the hours, and they should be able to access these benefits that are promised to them under the law. The remedy for them right now is to communicate with EDD about the income that they have received, so this recommendation continues to evolve as EDD clarifies its system. But for at least right now, the best recommendation from EDD is to take that notice of award, make a copy, and then write in each of the quarters that are listed. It has a little chart, how much income was received in each quarter from each of the employers that that particular person worked for during their base period year. So if they were only driving or only working for one app, they would have one line and the quarter earnings for each of those. If they were on multiple apps, they would list each of those apps and how much they earned from that. And then they should mail that back to EDD to get a determination as to what their weekly benefit amount would be. The second recommendation, and this we're still waiting for clarity from EDD about how this will work logistically, is that they will be able to apply through the new PUA system that opens on the 28th. We still don't know whether they're going to need to withdraw their current unemployment application if they've already submitted it, or how it will be distinguished from a regular unemployment application. So we're still waiting for guidance on exactly how that application will need to be completed for gig workers, but it will be available to them on the 28th.
Okay, so first of all, when you get the notice, just go ahead and fill in what you have on your own records for what you've gotten, send that back, and then we'll see what happens with the PUA that's coming up.
Exactly.
Okay. So what are some of the
It keeps evolving,
yes.
Senator Pan. I wish I had more clear answers on that question.
Well, certainly I think giving people some suggestions on what they should be doing now is always very helpful, and I really appreciate you talking about that. What are some of the options for undocumented workers?
So undocumented workers in California, those who have no work authorization, so not DACA recipients who do have work authorization, are not eligible for unemployment benefits. They are eligible for state disability or paid family leave. So if they or their family members are seriously ill and have medical certification, they can apply for those programs. But if they're just unemployed because their business is shut down as a result of the pandemic, they're not able to access unemployment benefits. However, the governor recently announced the disaster relief fund that will be available for undocumented workers in May, which will provide some limited economic assistance. There are also several undocker funds that are set up based on industry or geography, and there are still some that still have funds available to provide additional economic support.
Now, if someone else in the household, so the worker is documented, but there's someone else in their household or family who is undocumented, is that a concern for that worker filing for unemployment? Are they going to put anyone at risk in their household?
No, unemployment, even though it's called unemployment insurance benefits, it's insurance. So it is not a benefit like a government benefit that have kind of different qualifications and issues with the public charge, which may be where this question arose. So it is not a government benefit by the same kind of description.
Okay, well, thank you so very much for explaining to us the ins and outs of unemployment and disability for people who really are struggling right now and trying to keep food on the table and really are challenged by what we're doing. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Well, thank you for listening to this episode of Putting the Public into Health by Dr. Richard Pan. If you have questions or ideas for a future podcast, please email them to senator.pan@senate.ca.gov. Please stay at home as much as possible. Stay at least 6 feet away from others outside, wash your hands frequently, and try not to touch your face. Together, we are slowing the spread of the disease and saving lives. Thank you so much for listening.